So as of yesterday, we have a new Bishop of Maine. Woohoo! I was down there in Portland for the ceremony, and I gotta say, I thought as clergy, maybe they'd put all the clergy together somewhere, kind of up front. We ended up in the back chapel, the back of the cathedral, and about 8 feet in front of me, a giant video screen. So I get to watch the whole thing as a movie. I get to see what was actually happening directly behind the screen. It was very bizarre. But it was wonderful, very well coordinated. Logistics were perfect. It was really nice. Powerful, too. I often hear people ask, or say maybe, so what does a bishop do? And sometimes it's a question out of curiosity. What does a bishop do anyway? More often it has a tone of, so what do we need a bishop for? What do these guys do? Well, actually, bishops do quite a bit that we don't see. Bishop Lane, for example, is highly regarded in the House of Bishops for his wisdom and for his gifts as a mediator. Who knew? Of course, on the diocesan level, every Sunday the bishops traveling all over the state to celebrate at some church somewhere, and by doing so provides a link between the very local church and the greater church. Bishop is also responsible for resolving conflicts, for crafting policy, for crafting a vision of the church and communicating that to the people. Now, maybe one particular bishop or another you might think doesn't do this very well, whatever. It's still a lot to do. However, what's really more important than what a bishop does is what a bishop is. And I say what, not who, because it's largely what a bishop is. It's largely our own creation. I don't know if any of you got to see the service on live feed TV yesterday, or perhaps you've been to another ordination. If you've ever been to one, it's really bizarre. I mean, first of all, there's all the pomp and ceremony, there's endless procession, there's banners and incense and acolytes, and there's priests, there's deacons, there's the consecrating bishops, there's a whole bunch of other bishops, there's the vergers, the guys with the sticks that are supposed to keep the dogs out of the way and all this kind of stuff, on and on and on. There's a kettle drum up in the altar. I mean, it's just a big deal. And then there's all kinds of prayers and examining questions and all this kind of stuff. And then finally, sitting up front are the consecrating bishops. There's like 6 of them in full regalia. They look like medieval nobles or something in these strangely carved chairs. And people are brought up before them to present things. And then in the middle of the service, they finally get to this point where everyone is chanting an invocation for the Spirit. This chanted invocation to bring the Spirit down. And then the bishops gather around the ordinand, the one who's going to be made into a bishop, and they're gathering tight around him and chanting over him before they lay hands on him. If any one of us stumbled into this without any context, I'm sure we would say, good Lord, what is this cult? What is this strange? Did they lock the doors behind me? Am I going to get out of here alive? It is bizarre. What is going on there? What's happening? Is the Spirit there? Spirit is there and active, present. Is it really mostly about Thomas being made into Bishop Thomas? Yeah, that's part of it. But what it's really mostly about is us. It's about our need and demand to place someone at the altar, at that symbolic juncture between the people and God, to put someone there who will translate God for us, to put someone there who is of high moral character, even of holiness, so he can reflect back to us the best of who we are, and maybe even absorb and absolve the worst of who we are. We need and demand that. Now, Thomas Brown, our new bishop, he may occupy that role. But if we're really honest with ourselves, it's not Thomas we want. It's a bishop. Right? When the new bishop is vested, so the bishop comes in, the bishop-to-be, just wearing a simple white robe. And then after this chanting invocation and laying on of hands, he stands up and he has placed upon him a stole and a cross and a chasuble and a mitre, a hat, and placed on his finger is a ring, and placed in one hand is a Bible, and placed in the other hand is the crozier, bishop's staff. And this is very powerful. What this is really about is it's saying, you are no longer an individual. You are now our bishop. It's got a sacrificial quality to it. It's like you have to sacrifice who you are to be for us what we demand. Very powerful. The bishop embodies the institution for us. Embodies the established faith, embodies the church that we demand will be there when we need it. Now, this relationship with the institution is tricky business because the church, despite appearances, is not the institution. The church is the teaching of Jesus. That's really what the church is. Jesus who says, trust in God and love the other. Love God, love your enemy, love your neighbor, love the people you don't even like. That's the core teaching of Jesus. And that is really the church. When it works, when it's in balance, the institution supports and nourishes that teaching. It enables learning. It encourages practice. It provides a safe space. And it holds its leaders accountable, not to the institution, but to the teaching. When it doesn't work, when it's out of balance, when the institution becomes more important than that core teaching, that's when the church itself can be an agent for racism, discrimination, strife and division, or at best, just pettiness. Right? When Jesus said to his disciple Peter, "Your name means rock, and on this rock I build my church," traditionally, that has been made to mean that Peter was the first bishop, and all other bishops descend from him by apostolic succession, that's what it's called. I think that's mistaken. I think what's happening is Jesus is saying, Peter, I am handing over to you this core sacred teaching. This teaching about the world-changing power of love. If you keep it, if you tend it, if you share it, the very gates of hell will not prevail against it. In our gospel, Jesus meets a demoniac, a man possessed by a legion of demons. Now, this guy has an important role in his society, in town there. He's the one that they have set aside, howling among the tombs, to be the one that absorbs all the demons. And Jesus comes and says, No, that's not his role. You all have demons. We all have our own demons, and we know it. We got to deal with them. You don't get a scapegoat. People hear this and they don't like it. In fact, they are terrified. What? No one to blame but ourselves? Jesus, we don't like what we hear. Please go away. Maybe there's a warning in this story, even as we celebrate joyfully the consecration of a new bishop. The teaching of Jesus cannot be laid on the bishop alone. The teaching of Jesus doesn't even belong to the church. The teaching of Jesus is entrusted to you to learn, to meditate on, to practice it with all your heart, all your mind, and all your strength. May the church and its ministers help you with that. They cannot replace you. Thanks be to God.